Zach Elliott at Feel Free to Argue. Today I'd like to tackle kind of the landscape of global climate change. And in order to get an understanding of this, I think you need to back a bit away from it and actually look at the actors who are involved. And this is probably one of the places where it's most critical to do this. So we're going to take a moment to step back from the global warming debate and look at the actors, look at motivations. So first, let's look at the people who are saying that climate change is something that's occurring. And here you're looking at the scientific community, which has been kicked around a lot, especially in this country. And I think it's important, though, to look at them and their motivations and kind of what they're subject to. First of all, you have to see that they're far less well-funded than the other side. Individual scientists don't tend to be very highly compensated, even ones that are at the center of the global warming debate, like James Hansen and Bill McKibben. They do okay for themselves. They make a decent living, but none of them are, fabulously well compensated people. And most of the people who are contributing the raw data, which is the most important element of this debate, are people who are operating in complete obscurity. I mean, I can't imagine something kind of more remote than being at an Arctic weather station, or someone who is securing those, ice core samples that they use to examine, the historical record of weather. There are people all over the world doing the lonely work, mostly, of examining, global climate change, checking soil erosion, checking, air quality, checking, surface temperature of oceans. The people who are performing all of these tasks are not fabulously wealthy people, nor are they terribly invested in their answers, except making sure that they are the most accurate answers possible. Why is that? Well, because they're all subject, as scientists, to peer review, which means that if somebody else establishes that they're giving the wrong answers, then they're basically subject to blowback from the scientific community, assuming that it's not also established that it was perfectly reasonable that they made an honest mistake. Sometimes, there are preliminary results, and that's why scientists tend to be very cautious. Oftentimes when a scientist comes up with a new discovery, the first thing that a scientist is asking for is for other people to help them with the verification to see if this is a consistent principle or whether this is just an anomalous reading. So because of these elements, because of the fact that they are not very well funded, generally speaking, that a lot of it is lonely, not high prestige work, which they're not highly compensated for, and they're also subject to the rigors of peer review. Those are all things that are kind of on their side in terms of assessing the validity of what they're trying to put across to you. On the other hand, you have the representatives of what is, without question at this point, the most wealthy industry, the most wealthy and successful human enterprise in the history of human beings. And that's the oil industry and the other fossil fuel industries, which largely fuel our world right now. Now, these people have the advantages of having had a product that sells itself, essentially. In addition, there are lots of costs associated with each of these industries which are not borne by the industries, nor even really factored into the price. We've just kind of collectively, especially in this country, decided to ignore these collateral effects of all of these various things. The fact that burning oil and coal releases lots of particulate matter into the air, which has effects not only, eventual effects for the climate, but immediate effects on, people's lungs, and like increasing the instance of things like asthma and asthma attacks, something that I care about, having an asthmatic child. Um, so because they have this product that is very successful and very lucrative, they have a vested interest in convincing you that this product doesn't have any harmful effects. Not only for their present success, because, of course it's currently lucrative, but also they've rolled a lot of their current success into securing basically all of these materials going forward. I mean, there's very little uranium, oil, gas, coal, etc. on the earth that isn't already spoken for. I mean, most of these resources are secured. So when you're talking about the amount of fossil fuel that's essentially secured, i.e. owned by someone, you're talking about trillions of dollars. So, if we as a society decide that we need to really curb our fossil fuel use, then we are affecting the financial futures of these people. And when we're talking about rich people, this is like kind of beyond most people's conception of rich. We're talking about people and institutions with wealth that completely beggars your imagination. Okay? People who have more in common with each other than than they do with you. So I just think it's important that when we think about global warming, when we think about global climate change, we have to realize that the people who are on the other side, people who are saying that it's not bad or we can invent ourselves out of it, have an enormous vested interest. Enormous vested interest to the tune of trillions of dollars, okay? And if that isn't the best reason to lie ever, then I'm not sure what would be. So I think, and that in addition to the fact that they're not bounded by the same kind of limitations. Like, sure, they have scientists on their side, but they're bought and paid scientists who frequently cannot withstand the rigors, in fact generally cannot withstand the rigors of peer review. In fact, even when somebody is essentially hired by the other side, as one of the primary skeptics was, and given lots of money by the Koch brothers, once they do the hard work, they find out that no, actually it is occurring, and yes, it is caused by man. So once they enter the world of peer review and doing studies in a serious way, they come to the same conclusion as everybody else. So everything you know, everything you've ever heard, has been processed through this system in which basically, as far as information dissemination is concerned, all of the cards are held by the side that has every incentive to lie and every capability to do so. When you talk about like the ability of a powerful corporation to influence American public opinion and the American political process, you're talking about a moment in our history where that's probably more possible than at any other point in our history, because of how advanced psychological appeals have become in terms of how they relate to advertising and are used by advertising, because of the level of influence that corporations have on Our actual government, in terms of crumbs from the table of corporate America, being more than enough to, you know, make or break candidates. And of course, the most successful human enterprises ever have the most crumbs to spare to influence our process. So, I guess all I want you to know is that the process by which you receive your information is enormously corrupt. And you need to factor that in when you're determining how you're going to process the information that you get. If you want to be an intelligent person, if you don't want to be a sucker, if you don't want to be a mark, if you don't want to be used by this system and these people who do not care about you and do not care about your future or the future of your children. And of course, you know, with this probably more than anything else, if you have contrary information, if you have something that I have missed, please feel free to argue. This has been Zach Elliott. Take care, people.